Hi, everybody. Welcome today. I, I am very excited about today. This is a pivotal day for us here at espabo.org. So thanks for being with us. Thanks for spending your time with us, investing your energy, your money, and your time with us here today. I'm very excited about the whole program that we're doing with the doctoral program and many of the other aspects that we're working with here today. But it all started with spiritual psychology. I had been channeling for several years. I had been doing, I'm going to be telling you quite a few stories. And just to let you know how this is going to work here in our classes together, other than the 9 days that we have together, I'm going to be doing mostly out of channel information. In other words, most of the time, Steve is going to be telling you what the group says about something. We will have a channel almost every day. I'm sure of that. They're not going to let me get by without them jumping in person, but we will do a channel every day in some areas, but sometimes it'll just be a channel, but they just want to talk to you. It won't be on the specific subjects. But this is the book, Spiritual Psychology. It's just now being re-released, and it'll have a 2023 across the front. It's the same book. The difference is that this was made by Lightworker Publishing. The new one has to be Espabo Publishing because we do not own that name anymore. And on top of that, we've updated a few things. I've taken out some of the links to lightworker.com, now to espabo.com, etc. So it didn't really change much information in here when we're re-releasing it. It will be released, if it's not already, it'll be released on Amazon very quickly. So it should be available globally on Amazon very quickly. It's still available. You can still buy it from other people. There are other people that have bought some of these and are reselling them and so forth. So there's still a few available out there, and of course you can always get the digital version of that. But I'm very excited about this. I have to tell you a little bit of the story of how spiritual psychology began, what this process was, how this worked, and so forth. And I have to give credit to Sandy Sedgbeer for a lot of the book. She is the editor of this book and had done just an incredible job with it. She basically pulled this information out of me one word at a time. And we'd always have the same conversation, right? We'd get there. I used to have an office that was 8 foot by 8 foot, and I had so much electronic equipment in there, it would look like a B-52 bomber. I mean, every space was, all the way to the ceiling was taken up in there. And Sandy and I would sit in there and we'd work on, and this is back in 2000, so we'd work on this and we'd work on these things. And she kept saying, well, Steve, what does the group want to say here? And I say, well, Sandy, they're basically saying this. And she said, well, why don't they just say that then? So and then we'd go through all these things and we get in these points where we get into these arguments and not be able to do it. Barbara would come in at that time and she had it all prepared. She had tea already because that's what changed Sandy's mood the quickest. So she'd come in, she'd say, okay, guys, tea time. And anyway, so we spent months working on this book. And it was just absolutely incredible, an incredible experience with Sandy and me as well, because this was really the first time that I was able to quantify many of the things that I was already using. So let me explain a little bit about what that looks like here. We'll try to get this up for you so we can get these moving around. So basically what took place with this whole process is that I started doing private sessions on the telephone. And I would do telephone sessions with people. I had to make a living. And in the beginning, the seminar, where there was no seminars in the very beginning, so I started doing telephone sessions with people. They became very popular. They're still popular today. We only do 1 day a month now because I'm just too busy with other things. And this next month, I may have to skip months from time to time. But the reality is that they're very popular because I get to really show people how the group sees them in their own life and how that's different. And that's really what the group wants to share with all of us anyway. Not that this is right and this is wrong, or that the way you've been doing it is wrong and here's the right way. What we want to show you is a different way. It's that simple. We don't want to tell you that what you're doing is wrong or that you're on the wrong path or things of that nature. That's the old energy. That's the old duality stuff, right, wrong, up, down, good, bad. What we want to do here is show you multiple views of life on earth from the perspective of spirit. And that's what the group does. So that's what they're going to do here. So how did that end up in this book? Because this book is not a live channel book. It doesn't start every chapter with greetings from home. All my other books do. Interesting. So what is this one different? Why is this one different? And by the way, this and remember, we're almost tied for sales. Remember is my first book, and they're almost tied for sales with that. Absolutely amazing. All right, let me get it since I'm right here. I'm looking at it. Since we're showing books, I'll take you in the hallway there. I've got all my foreign publishing in there. I've got this book in 18 different languages right around the corner there. So anyway, Remember was my first book coming out. Very difficult to do. Sandy was the editor on that as well. Much easier because it was channel material. We already had the material. It was all there. I'd go through it. I'd work with Sandy on it. It was fairly simple to do. This was much more difficult. And the reason was that this was built around my private sessions that I was doing. So here's what happened. I would do these private sessions, and in these private sessions, somebody would tell me about an experience they were having or something that they have, or the group would show me that they've got this big energy blob back here about 5 years. Reach for that. They do that a lot. They'll tell me things, and I'm going to show you some of those secrets. I'm going to show you all these behind-the-scenes secrets in these 9 days, okay? That's what this is about, because they're not secrets. Everybody can use this. This is what we call super consciousness. Anyway, I'll get back to it. And we're all talented. We're all going to have our own spiritual connections. But this is very powerful stuff. So here's where we're at. She's trying to find out how I do my sessions, and she wants to help me write a book on doing my sessions. So she'd say, okay, Steve, tell me about one of your last sessions. And I said, okay, his name was Fred. And Fred called me, and he had this, and he had this situation, he had this situation, he had this situation. And Sandy would ask me some questions about it. And what would happen typically in my early sessions, and it still does, still the same way the group works with me, is somebody tells me about an episode in their life, or like I said, the group shows me that way back here, there's a big thing that changed their life. It's probably a phantom death. I need to ask them about it. Something like what happened 5 or 6 years ago, that type of thing. And that's how I work with people in my private sessions. And what would happen is they would tell me, oh, this is this story, or this is this situation. And the group would say, tell her this story. And I would tell her the story about how this same situation happened from the perspective of spirit, and what spirit was thinking about when this thing was going on. And I was able to show them from a different perspective. 9 times out of 10, when I told that person that story, they would go, oh my God, you just made sense of my whole life. Or they'd start crying, which happened a lot. I've learned to hear the tears, over the phone pretty easily. I also did a lot of 2-minute readings with people. We used to go to different places throughout the world and go to a bookstore and actually do a book signing with people, and then do free 2-minute readings afterwards. And there were times we had people lined up inside the bookstore to do a 2-minute reading. It was kind of exciting. So all this stuff was all about these stories that the group would tell me from perspective of spirit. How does this happen from spirit's perspective? That's what's in this book. And what I found was that many times I would tell somebody something over here. I would tell them one of these stories, and I'll get back to that in a minute. I would tell them one of these things about how the group sees this, or how their spirit needed this situation, or whatever the case was. And then we would bring them back and go to the next person. If the next person I'd tell them the same story. Now, in the beginning, I was really worried about that because hey, am I making this up? I mean, I'm telling a lot of these people the same story. And although there's lots of stories, I've got lots to choose from, I'm tending to draw just in people that are taking like 3 or 4 different life lessons. Well, the group said that's absolutely normal. That's what everybody will do. They will tend to draw in a clientele that fits them and they really work with pretty well. And you'll tend to draw in people that work with life lessons that you know well. That's just basically what it is. So with this, the group gave me this whole description. This book could have easily been called Light Work by the Numbers, and I almost called it that. And the reason I called it Spiritual Psychology, it just made so much more sense. To me, this was about the spirit, the psychology of spirit, which is what we're doing. And for those of you who are working on your doctorate degree here at SpiritualPsychology, that is one of the key elements of it is spiritual psychology, because it's how everything is built around spiritual psychology. There are two books. You probably heard this already. There are two books that really cover our experience here on Earth from the group. The first one is Spiritual Psychology, and the second one is Crossing the Veil. I'm not going to get up and get it. It's right over there. Crossing the Veil is the most recent book that we put out about a year ago, and it's quite a bit different. Now, Spiritual Psychology covers the spirit's experience of what takes place on planet Earth. So in other words, the spirit wants to tell you how to be a human. That's what this is. And we're also going to give you a lot of tips for those of you who do readings. For those of you who do readings, we're going to give you a lot of information here during this 9 days. And some of it you'll use in how, some of it you'll go, oh, I'm going to take this whole thing, and some of it you'll just use pieces of it. Perfectly fine. This is not about a belief system. This is not BS. This is about finding pieces that work for you, okay? Some of you are healers. Some of you just want to find out about yourselves. You want to see about yourselves. You want to see about your brother that's been driving you crazy all your life. You want to see what his life lesson is. You want to see some of these other things and how they fit together, and it really is cool to watch that. And that is one of the things that Barbara did. Barbara, in the beginning, she was one of my greatest skeptics. In the very beginning of this work, she was absolutely convinced I was making all this up and that I was just coming up with all this great stuff and so forth to be able to do that. And it took years for Barbara to actually come on board and say, okay, I know this is well beyond what you know. And she literally came on board a different plan. So anyway, it was kind of an interesting situation to go through with that process and to be able to do that. So that's what we're going to be doing. How are we going to be doing it? When are we going to be doing it? Well, let me give you the kind of the rundown on it, okay? Day one, today, we're going to do the introduction. We're going to talk about what is spiritual psychology. We're going to cover the assumptions. In other words, the we believes. It's actually the I believes, because I'm basically going to tell you what the group has told me, okay? So and the reason for that is very simple. It's helpful for you to know what I believe. It doesn't mean you need to believe the same thing. Let's get that clear. We all have our different belief systems, and we can all go in different directions. As long as we don't call one right or wrong, we're good. We're fine. So I'm going to offer you quite a few things here, but this is basically important that you know what I believe and what the group has told me and what I've done. So we're going to cover a little bit of that today. Then we're going to cover the 12 paradigms, which is actually the beginning of the work, the beginning of the book, and be able to do that. We will go through the 12 paradigms today and the art of mastery. The art of mastery is actually just going to be the channel from the group. They want to talk to you about mastery. It's actually, again, chapter in the book, but they just want to channel it live to you. So we'll be doing that today. Now I'm going to show you all 9 days, what we're going to do all 9 days, but I'm also going to have to give you a little freedom. This is the first time I've done this online. I may switch things around a little bit, okay? We may not be exactly on the same schedule that I'm showing you right in the beginning. Day 2, there's only one thing on the schedule, and that's the 7 stages of life. Again, we could have called this light work by the numbers. It would have been real simple. 7 stages of life, the 12 paradigms, the 12 primary life lessons, all the rest of it. So anyway, 7 stages of life, how human goes through what they experience in each one of the different ones. Now, again, we talked about the 2 books. Spiritual Psychology is all about the things that happen to you on planet Earth. Crossing the Veil is all the things that happen to you on the other side. Okay? So hopefully you get both of those books or take both of those courses, which we'll have available as soon as I finish recording spiritual psychology here. So anyway, that's the idea. But day number 2, we're going to be working with the 7 stages of life. It's really helpful to know where you are and where other people are. It helps you understand really what they're going through, having to be in a different stage of life than you are. And it's really fascinating to watch. So that's a really good one. We're going to spend some time talking about that. Day 3, the nature of contracts. Day 3 is all about contracts. M will probably come in. He's the one that sits there at the big table and helps you make your contracts along with all the thousands of people that you're going to interact with on the planet. So M will probably be the one that comes through. I try not to tell you M's going to do this and Observer's going to do this, because sometimes they don't. Sometimes they just go a different direction. Anyway, day 3 is also going to be about the backup plans. Absolutely one of these beautiful stories that I tell people sometimes. Then the group says, tell them about backup plans. And boy, when I tell, their eyes light up. I just made sense of their life, all the guilt, all the wonders that they were feeling about something in their family, they can let go. Absolutely magical. I'm going to tell you all about that. It's a very fascinating way to look at life. Relationship contracts. We're going to talk a lot about relationships. Energy role model. And those are contracts, by the way. We don't always just make contracts. Sometimes we make conscious contracts, which are contracts we make on this side of the veil that weren't made on the other side of the veil. They're both good. There's not one better than the other, but basically we're going to be talking about relationship contracts, how that works. We're going to be talking about the energy role model. What an incredible piece about this. It is really helpful for people to know, especially if they've never found their own. We'll get back to that. The lineage intent. Why did you choose to put yourself in that family line? There's a reason. And we'll hopefully take you back and find that. But that is what lineage intent is. And bump contracts. And these, by the way, are all things that, other than the word relationship contracts, those are basically things that the group came up with. So these are things that the group kind of coined the words for, except for backup plans. Plan B. We've been calling it Plan B for a long time, but backup plans, that type of thing. But basically, these are ideas, and I don't believe other people are using these. They may by now, especially because we've trained a lot of people over the years. But nonetheless, those are going to be covered on day 3 to work with on day 3. Day 4, we're going into night games. Interestingly enough, it was the Italian version of the book. Spiritual Psychology was translated into 14 languages. And in the Italian version of the book, they wanted to eliminate the entire chapter on night games. It was interesting. I let them do it. I didn't think it was. The group said it wasn't a problem. As it was, our books did not take off in Italy anyway. I think this and maybe one other book was the only books we had that we had in Italian. But nonetheless, that's kind of how it works. So day 4, we're going into night games. We're going to talk a lot about night games. In night games, we're going to talk about the triad of sleep. We're going to talk about the physical body. We're going to talk about sex. We're going to talk about energy matrix, energy stamps, which is how we work with life lessons. We're going to talk about the 3 attributes of energy and the energy torus. So this is all going to be jammed in on day 4. Day 5, we're going to talk about power cycles. This is brand new material. It is not in the book. We're going to talk about power cycles and how that runs on regular basis, how we can see what power cycle or where we are in our own power cycle. We're going to talk about human evolution in general, how it works. We're also going to talk about last timers. Last timers are very simple, and I've told a lot of people they're last timers. Very simple reason, a very simple thing. They need to be honored. The group told me to honor the last timers when I first came in. I was not a last timer when I first came in. I'm still not sure if I am or not, but I've helped other people identify that they are. And a last timer is simply someone who came in, put a lot on their plate this lifetime because they didn't want to come back after this. We'll talk a lot about that because there's a lot of you that are experiencing that and a lot of you that have almost overwhelmed yourself because of so much that you put on your plate trying to get through and try to master everything in this lifetime. So there's a lot that we'll talk about with that as well. And then we'll talk about the collective life lessons. Not only do we work with life lessons in general, but we also work with life lessons in the collective. So the collective of humanity works with different life lessons as well. And we've recently changed our collective life lesson again. So it'll be fun to kind of watch with and to see where that goes from. Then we'll be talking about relationships again. Children, young adults. We'll be talking about some of the different sections there in day 5. Day number 6, we're going to talk about the planning session and the review. The planning session is the session where you plan your life, you make your contracts, you ask people to play different parts in your life. You ask this one to be your lover, you ask this one to break your heart in high school, you ask this one to steal all the money, all the different things that we set up. And the rest of the day, because that's probably only about half of the day, the rest of the day will be a review of the things we've talked about so far. Now, we're also going to be throwing in one extra day, all right? And I've kind of left that flexible at this point. It doesn't have to be a live presentation, although I'd like to do it live in case any of you would like to come in on Zoom or anything of that nature. So I will do at least one Q&A day, and I will give you, I'm sorry I didn't set the email up, but I will give you a special email also that you can use. It'll be right under here, and as soon as I get it done, it'll be right under this window, okay? You'll have a little thing with a special email where you can send your questions. When I get a lot of questions, we'll have a free day, and I'll try to announce it, give you some time so that you can be there if you want to be there live. And we'll have a question and answer day. Again, won't go into channel, just answer the questions that are here, try to expand on anything to do that. We may end up with 2 of them if we have enough, but we'll see. Anyway, I will monitor this email address that comes in, and we'll kind of keep an eye on how many we have. Once we have 10 or 12 or something, we'll probably have one of those sessions. So there will be more than 9 sessions in this whole segment. The question and answers, hopefully, generally I can get them done in one day, but it's been a long time since I've done a 9-day seminar, so I can't. And the rest of that day will be spent on review. Why are we reviewing after only 6 days? Because now we go into the life lesson. So all this stuff is the important things about, or some really cool information that a lot of you, especially if you do work with people, if you do any type of counseling work, if you do any type of relationship work, if you do any type of work with people on a spiritual level, we got some really cool tools that you're going to really enjoy. I will guarantee that. Absolutely. And we'll be doing this. This will generally run 60 to 75 minutes every day. Those of you who have taken a lot of courses from me know that I use a lot of activations. This is not going to be activations. We may have 1 or 2 activations a little further down the road as we go through this, but this is going to be information. And we're going to spend our time, and as I mentioned, we will have the group come in and do a channel every day. You'll hear from them every day. So then day 7, we start in the 12 primary life lessons. And we'll do acceptance, adaptation, being, and charity. Acceptance is fairly simple to understand. Adaptation, being is generally people who have addictions. Charity is, anyway, we'll come through all this as we go through these later. But what this really is a fascinating thing of being able to do all these sessions and come up with these little categories that I can tell people about that they can do further research on. And 9 times out of 10, when I say one of these things, they go, oh, I knew it. I knew that was it. Or I already read your book and I already picked that out. Or sometimes they'll say, well, I picked out a different one. And most people have picked out charity. I'll get to that when we get to charity at the end. Charity will be the last one. Well, charity's there. But anyway, not charity. We'll get to it in a minute. Day 8, we'll be talking about communication, creation, definition, and integrity. Definition is probably the most common one that we will experience here in metaphysics. In other words, most of you have experienced definition or experiencing it now. That may be one of your life lessons. This is very common in light workers, for women especially. For men, the more common one is communication. Well, we'll talk about it when we get there. We'll talk about it. Those two are both in the same day, by the way. And then day 8 will be love, trust, truth, grace, and the graduation. I think I put the graduate. That was day 9. Can't keep count. I was reading wrong. So anyway, that was day 9. Put graduation in there. So that'll be the final graduation of this. This is a certified course. You will be receiving a certificate of this, and you will be getting there to be able to do that in different ways to be able to work with that. So I'll tell you more about that as we go through. Let me get set up here, and we'll go into here. So anyway, what is spiritual psychology? That is the big question that we're going to ask now. What exactly is spiritual psychology? How do you use it? When can you use it? How does it work? All the rest of it. Well, welcome. Okay, we made it through some of the brain fog stuff. Now let's just take a breath and just relax a minute, okay? Shake your hands. Find your center. Good. Welcome to the Light Masters that are here. Well, welcome to all of you that are here. And there are many of you that will be taking this later, not watching it live. That's one of the reasons we're doing this, is specifically to have this event in the store and to be able to have people be able to go to this when they want to work on their doctorate, be able to get that. Okay, so what is spiritual psychology exactly? Well, it's really challenging. You know, Carl Jung is the one who basically developed, a student of Sigmund Freud, basically developed psychology. And there's so many different levels of psychology, and there's so many different areas of psychology, including one that is considered to be spiritual, is spiritual psychology in different ways. Spiritual psychology from the group's perspective, again, and I will tell you that is all I can give you anyway, is the group's perspective on things. What they wanted to do is give us tools. They want us to understand our journey as a spirit pretending to be a human. They approach everything from the spirit perspective. And that sounds really interesting, but it gives us a different view. And that's exactly, again, what they want to do with us. They want to be able to bring us into different aspects to be able to do that. You know, you may have somebody you're working with. Maybe you work in a place where there's desks, and their desk is over here and your desk is over here. They drive you crazy all day long. I don't know what it is about that person, but every time they cough, you just kind of cringe a little bit. And if they come over to your desk to ask you for something, you just kind of hold your breath. It takes you a while to kind of get over them and so forth. So you've got this energy rub with somebody in your office. And it could be serious. It could be simple. Whatever the case, doesn't make any difference. It's your problem, not theirs. Let's be real clear about that. This is your problem, not theirs. So in there, what do we do about our problem? Well, we look at it in different ways. We figure out a way to empower that person. We figure out ways to do that, but we also try to understand it. And if you happen to know what their life lesson is, it's a little easier to understand. Now, what you don't have in that particular situation is permission to go tell them what their life lesson is. You're just going to piss them off really bad. So we don't do that. But it's for you. You may understand what they're dealing with. And you guys say, oh, that's charity. I understand charity. Okay, I get it. No problem. I'm not going to take it personal. And now you move on to something else. That is one of the greatest things that you can do. And this information is about that. And that's one of the reasons the group wanted to give me this information specifically, was about being able to have people understand everybody else on the planet in a different way. And again, you may not agree with some of these. That's fine. We don't expect you to agree. We're not looking for followers, okay? We're looking to empower healers. That's different. And that's the idea of what we're working with here today. So Anyway, that's the idea of this. That is what spiritual psychology is all about. And the idea of it is for us. And as I mentioned, many of you are healers in your own right. Many of you are counselors. And some of you do it openly. Some of you do it quietly. Some of you do it as spiritual counselors. Some of you do it as teachers in schools. Some of you do it as in different ways. Some of you have your degree in kitchen table counseling many times over, and you've never done it professionally. Either way, this is going to fascinate you because it's really a picture of life on earth from the spirit perspective. And that's one of the best things I can give you on that. Now, right away, let's define a couple words and define a few things as we go forward. A healer. I use that word a lot. The group uses the word a lot. It doesn't mean that you heal people. Let's get that straight. A healer is a person who creates space for other people to feel comfortable enough to heal themselves. They're the only ones that can heal themselves. You can't do it. You can assist. You can be there with tools. The doctor uses his knowledge from whatever condition you're coming in, you're sitting down. He uses his knowledge or her knowledge to go through this and to figure out and to look at the drugs or whatever they're going to prescribe or physical therapy or whatever it is that they're working with. And they use the highest amount of tools that they have at their convenience to work with whatever ailment you're working with. That's the same thing we're going to give you. That is what we're trying to do here today and over this 9 days. So a healer is a person who creates space. Are you good at creating space? It's really interesting because when you create space for somebody to do something on their own, they think they did it on their own. It's really kind of cool. It's really kind of cool. It's really neat. It really works well that way. Okay, so I'll fill you in on just as much as I can about details because some of this will come up over the 9 days. We're going to get to know each other if we don't already. My name is Steve Rother. I'm very honored to be working with you here. I've been doing this for now 27, almost 28 years. So it's been a real ride for me. Before that, I was a general contractor in San Diego. I thought I knew what I was going to be when I grew up. I just didn't know that this was here, and everything changed. My wife and I, Barbara, traveled the world for 15 years. Like I said, we've been doing this for 27 years. We started traveling at one point, doing seminars, and the book was published in 18 different languages. So that allowed us to make connections in different places. And people would write us and say, hey, I've got a small group of people. Would you consider coming? And we would look at our own list and see if we had enough. And we would go. We'd go to Turkey. We'd go to Istanbul. We'd go to, that is Turkey. We'd go to Latvia. We'd go to all these, all these countries that some of them I didn't even know existed before. I didn't know Latvia existed. We talked to 700 people in Kazakhstan. 700 people met us in Kazakhstan. Absolutely amazing stuff. So anyway, that opened the door for us to travel quite a bit, to experience quite a bit, and do different things. We did a lot of work. My partner was Barbara. She passed away about 2.5 years ago. So we lost Barbara about 2.5 years ago, and I want to be sure and bring it up because I will be talking about her as I go through this. She's a huge part of the material in the beginning. She was here when spiritual psychology was developed. She played a big part in everything. So you will hear me talking about Barbara quite a bit. And I just want to let you know that that's it. Barbara has passed away. She's on the other side of the veil, and I hear from her all the time. In fact, I think she's even hooked me up to make me fall in love in the meantime. So anyway, you will be hearing from Barbara as well as part of the work. Now, I consider myself a channel. And I will tell you, that's one of the first, I won't call it an argument, but slight disagreements I had with the group right in the beginning. I picked up a book in Costco. It was actually Price Club back then, but that's the original Costco. Anyway, Costco up north, San Diego was Price Club. They ended up joining. But the whole thought of that began there at Costco, at Price Club. So at Price Club one day, I'm walking around and I'm getting ready to check out, and I run into a stack of books. They had books just stacked up on these stacks, on these displays. And I knocked over a whole bunch of books. So I had to pick them all up, and I picked them all up, and I get to the counter, and I put them all back as best I could. It's kind of funny because I worked with books at that time. So anyway, I restacked them on the display and got them all nice. Went to the checkout, and there was a book down at the bottom of the cart that I didn't see. It was a crayon book. Crayon books were actually sold at Costco at one point. Crayon is a channel. Lee Carroll is a channel. He was in San Diego for many years. I'm not sure exactly where he's living now. We became friends there for a long time, and we started working in some fun pieces of it. But that's really what started this whole thing for me, was a crayon book. And opening up from that and starting to get to know people and starting to see people from a different perspective and form different families. Absolutely incredible. I consider myself to be a conscious channel. There's a lot of people that are unconscious channels that think that their message is more pure because they're not involved. Spirit comes through them completely. Spirit speaks, and the person isn't involved. And I offered to do that with a group. I said, how about if you just take over my body and I'll just sit there and show up and you can do it? And they laughed. They thought that was hilarious. They said, no, we chose you because of who you are, because of your personality, because of your own past, because of your experiences, and because we also know you're from the other side of the veil. I did not know about ILRA at that time. I did not know about these entities that have come. There was just a blanket group of beings that were channeling energies to me. So I offered to do that. I offered them. They said, no, we want you to be there. You're one of the group. And they told me there were 9 in the group, and that I was the 9th one. So interesting concept to be able to go through to do this and so forth. But it's really interesting because I like practical magic better than I like magic. Practical magic is when we can create magic, but we can also teach it to somebody else. And that's really where I'm at personally and what I like to do with all this. So practical magic is the idea that we lose anything that I can give you to make your life more comfortable, to, in this case, with spiritual psychology, to make your life more effective as a human or as a healer, in whatever case, whatever you're at. Those are the things that we're looking to do. And that is the aspect of what we're working with here on this. Now, I will be in and out of channel. There will be times when the group wants to tell you things specifically. They'll drop into a quick channel, in and out. If not, we'll be doing channels probably at the end of every day. Today, they specifically want to do a channel talking about the art of mastery. So we'll do that. Like I said, even though it's in the book, I'm sure they're going to cover different things. That's usually what happens. And that's the idea of where we are and who I am. So now with the assumptions, there's a few assumptions I'm simply going to lay on the table for those of you who, because when we get to these areas, we're simply just going to talk as if everybody assumes this. And it doesn't mean you have to believe the same thing I do, but I do want to identify that there's a few things that I will be talking about that will come up in this. One of them is reincarnation. We just simply do not believe that we're energy. And as you will hear in spiritual psychology, the group specifically says energy never dies. It only converts from one form to another, the same as we do. So I do believe that in reincarnation, you're going to hear a lot about, you're going to hear a lot from the word home if you're not familiar with the group's work. The word home simply means heaven, home, the place from which we came. We don't use the word heaven a lot because that also indicates that there would be a hell, and the group does not agree with that at all. So there's no polarity in that way, and we don't need to control people. So we're not going to use that concept at all. There's a few simple assumptions that we'll talk about as we go through this. One of the biggest assumptions that we will make with all of this, and I know it's a little scary sometimes to talk about this, but the group says, you are God. First time I said that, it just stopped me cold. It completely stopped me cold. What do you mean, God? Does that mean I don't believe in God? Does that mean, what does that mean exactly? Well, what it means is the group actually sees us as the collective of humanity and the larger aspect of all those energies. And that's what we end up doing in this time together. So in this reality, there's a lot of energy that's moving in this direction that we typically don't necessarily know about. Now, the whole conscious creators is the word that I like to use, because we're always consciously creating things. Sometimes we're subconsciously creating this or unconsciously creating them. But the reality is we're creator beings. And if we understand that we're creator beings and that we created everything, we can learn how to do that. Now, we are behind the veil. The veil is very tricky. It keeps us from seeing that we create everything ourselves. It keeps us from seeing that we're creator beings. And the biggest challenge about that whole concept of you are God is you're not the only God. And that's important to remember. So how can we be fully in our power while making space for other people to be in their power? Welcome home. That is the question of the day. That is the idea of what we're using and where we're working with. So that is the aspect of what we're doing. It's all about empowerment. It's about not only empowering you, but empowering you so that you're able to empower other people. That's it. That's how this whole thing spreads and grows in these incredible ways. It's absolutely magical. So how is spiritual psychology used? You're going to find a lot of ways. Barbara was not a psychologist. Barbara did not do private sessions with people. She did, but she never called them private sessions. So it's kind of funny. Well, no, a lot of times on the breaks of our seminars, I would come to one corner and I'd tell people they could come up and talk to me and if they wanted to in the breaks. So I'd come up and I'd have this line of people that would be waiting to talk to me on the breaks. And then there'd be Barbara's line of people that would be waiting to talk to her on the breaks. It was kind of cool. Yeah, it was really interesting. So she did do sessions, but she didn't call them that. And yet she used spiritual psychology all the time. She used it all the time. She would come in. Sometimes she'd come after a break or in the evening after a seminar. We'd just be in with a fresh group of people, a brand new group of people. And one of the things that she did was she would always look for anybody that might kind of stick out energetically. In other words, may cause troubles, may end up being, difficult or energies or something of that nature. So she was always on this search for, what's going on out here? Is everybody getting it? Is everybody? And she was the Kleenex lady. She was always there with a Kleenex to help everybody get used to it. But she would come to me in the evenings, and she said, Steve, this girl over here, the blonde one, she's really working with charity, isn't she? And she'd compare notes with me on a lot of these things. It was really fascinating, really fascinating. So anyway, it can be used in a lot of different ways. This is simply helpful to help people understand who they are, where they are, and what they're working with. I don't have one to show you specifically, but I have one from the Lightmaster in 2016 that I will show you. You're going to get a PDF certificate that is frameable for this as a spiritual psychologist. So it's really powerful this way. I don't have them available yet in hard copy, but I will, because all of our certificates for the doctoral program are going to be in hard copy. So we will have opportunities for you. Once you take this course, you'll be able to go through and actually go to the store and sign up for the certificate. There's a charge for it. I forgot what it is. It's going to be probably about $30, I think. And we'll print one of these out and send it to you. We have difficulties with mail for some reason. Sending mail to Europe is incredibly expensive. Unbelievable. I sent one package one time. It was $100 to send one package. It was ridiculous. So anyway, I'm sure it's cheaper than that in many ways, but I'm going to try and combine these for Europe because we have a lot of people in Europe. And I'm going to try and combine them to where I can send them all over in a big bulk. So you may not get them super fast, but I'm also coming over, if I'm coming over anytime soon, I will also bring them over personally. But that's how that will work with those. But you will get a very nice certificate as it identifies you by name as a spiritual psychologist. So you'll have an opportunity to work with that too. But what does it mean? What do you use? Well, some of you are actually psychologists. Some of you are counselors or psychologists and work with different ways. Whether you work with young people, whether you work with adults, whether you work with children. Some of you are spiritual teachers, where you simply work with people on a spiritual basis. Incredible. Some of you are teachers. Some of you are team leaders, where you're working with a bunch of people to bring them together in different ways, whatever you're doing with these things. All of these things are about working with other people and bringing this together. And that's what psychology is about anyway. Some of you will be working like I do online. I do private sessions in person once in a great while. I don't get a chance to do them very often, but I do them once in a while. And now, since COVID-19 came along, it opened up all these possibilities for us. So we basically have capabilities of working with people all over the world. I do a lot of private sessions and I work online for the very simple reason that my books were translated into 18 languages. My audience is all over the place. I can't go to one little city and say, okay, here's my group of people that I want to bring together. They're spread out all over the globe. So I do work a lot with online as a result of that whole process. But that's the energies of who I am. I hope I gave you kind of an introduction, how this happened, how it started, where we're at, and where we're working with. I hope you enjoy that. I'm going to step into doing the work with the 12 paradigms here in just a second. In the meantime, I'm going to take a little breather. Here's to you. I just have to make sure I don't slurp. That's something that drives Elka crazy. If I'm drinking hot coffee, I slurp in the beginning, and she goes, "Don't slurp." Sometimes I just do it to piss her off. That's okay. So today we're going to be working with one of the things that the group gave me, and this is the 12 paradigms for healers. This is the beginning of the process. In the beginning, I was a general contractor. I had 7 people that worked for me. I had sort of a kind of a partner. He was pretty high up there. He still worked for me, but he wasn't an owner, but he was kind of a partner. So I had him. We had 7 guys that we would move around to different locations. We worked mostly with casework and millwork, cabinetry. We did so mostly in commercial locations. I did a lot of banks. I did a lot of storefronts, things of that nature. We worked a lot at night during the banks because you can actually go into a bank at night and leave all the doors open because you can't steal anything. It's amazing. So anyway, that's what we did. We go in, we take all of our equipment and we work on the bank and we remodel it during the night. And then at 8 o'clock in the morning, they'd have to open up and we'd have to be all clear. So yeah, it's really interesting stuff. Anyway, fun things about that, but I had no history in spirituality. My wife, Barbara, at the time, was very spiritual. She went to a spiritual group. She went to a spiritual church. She had her spiritual groups that she went to. And she was always trying to get me to go along. Always trying to get me to come join her and so forth. And I did once in a while to kind of support her. You don't want, I wanted, since she's in a group of people, she's always talking about her relationships and stuff. I wanted them to see me. I wanted to show up, that I'm supporting her. So I show up quite a bit. In fact, that's how it started. I will tell the story of how it started at a later time. It takes too long here right now. I will do it as a special, probably an extra video that we'll put up because it takes about a half an hour to tell that story. But that's basically how this started. So in the beginning, all of a sudden, I'm starting to channel. And I wasn't aware of it. I wasn't aware of what it was or anything else. This was before I picked up the book from Lee Carroll and really started to work with this. I started getting some energies. Picked up the book from Lee Carroll, from Cryon, picked up the first Cryon book, and I said, oh my God, somebody's channeling. This is fascinating. And I had read some things before. I was interested in it. I'd read some things from, I can't think of her name right now. Anyway, I'll come up with it in a minute. But basically, she's done some incredible work on the planet, but also a channel. And I read some of her books and so forth to do this. I said, oh, okay, I guess I'm a channel. So I started, okay, what's that going to look like? Now, in the meantime, I'm running my cruise and I'm busy. So we've got busy stuff. All of a sudden, work stopped. When you're a contractor, you bid on jobs. When you get them, sometimes you go, oh God, what did I miss? How did I get that? Was I the lowest bid? Different things that you do. So anyway, I'd bid a job and I'd miss it. I'd bid a job and I'd miss it. And I'd bid a job and I'd miss it. And I just wouldn't get it. I'd be outbid or circumstances weren't right or something else. So things really slowed down. We had to find other things for our people to do. That was when this information started coming in. And they wanted me to start doing sessions with people. I had a lot of difficulty with that. So I'm a contractor. If you want me to tell you how to work with plastic laminates or how to frame a roof or something of that age, I can tell you all about it. I got a lot of confidence in that. But you want me to tell you about spirit? You want me to speak as spirit? I don't have any confidence in that. And they gave me this. They said, here's what we're going to do. They said, these are for you. We're going to give them for you, although you will probably share them, which is what I'm doing now. But these are for you specifically to keep you on track as a healer. Again, we've defined what a healer is. A healer is a person who literally wanted to do that, is creating space for other people to feel comfortable enough to heal themselves. I had a lot of challenges with that. In the beginning, as I mentioned, I had a little disagreement with the group. They wanted me to bring forth the message. They wanted me to start writing. They wanted me to start bringing things down and start channeling, basically. And I was fine with that, but I had just started reading this book from Lee Carroll, and I wanted to call it channeling. I said, I'm a channel. I said, this makes perfect sense. I'm getting this information from the other side of the veil. And what do you want me to call it? And they said, why do you have to call it anything? Why don't you just call it Steve Rother? And I was very confused by that. And I will tell you, I did not do that. I called myself a channel. And I moved into the spiritual arena as a channel, as a vessel for this information. Now, here's an interesting point. From the group's perspective, now you got to keep in mind, the group doesn't have egos. They don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. They think differently than we do when you're on the other side of the veil, totally different. And yet, there's so much going on there all at once that literally they don't have any attachment. They give me things all the time, but they're not upset if I don't use them. Isn't that interesting? It's kind of like they open a door, all of a sudden this path opens up over here, and I can go down it, but if I don't go down it, it's okay. It's not a problem. That's their attitude with things. But they did give me these 12 paradigms for healers, and they were just simply suggestions for the 12 paradigms of facilitation. You light masters may recognize that little logo in the middle. I've used that too. Okay, number 1, 12 paradigms of facilitation. This is from the group. On the new planet Earth, it is appropriate to reach for a higher truth to support higher realities. These 12 paradigms for facilitators are offered as suggestions to begin to define higher truths for healers. Here are the suggestions that will allow you to keep your balance while creating space for others to heal themselves. That's the whole purpose of the process. So with that, let's go into number 1. Some of you may recognize some of my beautiful artwork. It was a gift from a fellow channeler or fellow teacher by the name of Janos. Anyway, first paradigm, focus on empowerment. Absolutely critical. And I will say that some of you will disagree with some of these paradigms. Again, not trying to tell you this is the absolute way to do it, but these are suggestions the group gave me to build my confidence, to follow some simple steps to build my confidence, to be out there and to do the work. Not just, doing it on the phone was one thing, but I was hiding, wasn't I? I mean, nobody could see me. I wasn't in front of people. Now I'm starting to do sessions not only in person, but I'm starting to do seminars in person. Totally different thing. Totally different thing. I needed that. So the first thing they said was healing in the higher vibrations of the new planet Earth can only take place when each person holds their own power. This means that our first concern and our first intent must always be to find ways to facilitate others without taking their power from them. Very simple. You want to be able to facilitate them, but don't take their power from them. That is not easy because people give you their power all the frigging time. Amazing things that they will do with this. I'll tell you a story about that at another time. Well, I'll tell you right now. There was a lady doing a session with this was a telephone session. This was a while back. I had 45-minute sessions. I have 15 minutes in between the sessions because they're scheduled every hour. So I've got 15 minutes to kind of clear the deck, put new recording stuff in, whatever I needed. Back in the time that this happened, I was using audio tapes, so I had to change tapes. So here I am they're finishing up this session. This lady's trying to decide whether she's going to take this job or not. And she says, Steve, tell the group to tell me which job to take, this one or that one. And we just spent the whole 45 minutes showing her what she was going to get over here and what she was going to get over here and the problem she was going to run into here and the problem she was going to run into here. And she wouldn't make that decision. She wanted to give her power to the group to make that decision. And she was okay with that. The group wasn't okay with that. And they would not do it. And it went on and she kept, and then we get toward the end and we're getting toward 5 minutes to the top of the hour. Look, I really have to go now. I just can't do it. She says, I'll pay you double for the next session too. Just cancel that one. I'll pay you for that one too. This is someone who literally was scared to death to make a decision. And we typically give our power away all the time to people like that. And it's fairly common. But if we're going to hold our own power, the only way to do it is to hold our own power. And that's the intent. That's the idea. Am I taking their power away? First question. How can I empower them without taking their power from them? Number two is all about healing by request. And this has caused some disagreements before, discussions. All healing facilitation must be by request. It is no longer possible to facilitate healing for another without their specifically requesting it or agreeing to it. Interesting. And I will tell you, there's a lot of times, like I said, that people, what happens with children? What happens? Do children have to specifically request? No, they agreed to it. They agreed to let their parents make the decisions for them, didn't they? So they're agreed to it. They're in the flow of whatever they need from their parents, and they basically allow their parents to take that power from them at that point. It's just their parents' job. So yeah, up to a certain point. When is that? Well, the children think it's about 7 years old, and the parents think it's about 23. So yeah, little different, but that's the idea. Now, does that mean you can't send energy? Our attorney for Espavo, dear friend of mine. And he says, Steve, I got in this habit a long time ago when I'm driving and I see an accident or I see somebody by the side of the road that needs help. I just automatically do this. What was it? He said, Jesus, Mary, Joseph. He'd say, Jesus, Mary, Joseph. He was raised Catholic. So he'd say, Jesus, Mary, Joseph, and send them some energy and be on their way. So he says, so what you're telling me here is that all these times and all these people I'm sending this energy to, they're not getting it because they didn't specifically request it? Yeah. But who needed the healing there? Was it the people on the side of the road or was it David? David had a need to express his healing abilities, didn't he? And again, it wasn't wrong. It didn't do any harm that he sent them that love and that energy. In fact, it kind of created a space for them to maybe get a little better, but he doesn't have a direct effect on them. How would it have a direct effect on them? If they requested it. Okay? And I know this is a little confusing, and this is probably the one that will get most of the questions and challenges, but I want to bring that up. That is the second paradigm. The third paradigm is all about intent. In the new energy, it's only possible to facilitate healing with the highest intent. As we further evolve, we'll find that there are no more secrets. As facilitators, we must allow ourselves and our motivations to be fully apparent. It's the only way it's going to work. It's real simple. We can fool people. We can put things over on people. We can fool people part of the time. Isn't that what Lincoln said? We can do all those things to set things up, but long term, you're just a human walking around with everybody else. Why not just tell them you're just a human walking around? Here's my problems and here's your problems. What's wrong with that? That's the idea. It's to pull off all the facade. The facade is in the bodysuit. We're not going to be talking about bodysuit in this seminar at all. I'm sure I'll make references to it because it's a huge part of the work. But it did not come into being in this spiritual psychology. That came in Crossing the Veil. So we do a lot of work with it in Crossing the Veil, and also in CLPP we do more work with it, and cognitive life path programming as well. Because it's really important to understand how we're changing that and how it affects us and so forth. So your intent is a huge part of this whole process. As facilitators, we want to be as clear as we can with our intent. We have nothing to hide. There's nothing there that we can't work with. We can't do in different ways, but we work with it. Okay? Number 4, perception. Understand that illness is not always a sign that something is wrong. There are times when illness is necessary to facilitate change, and our role is merely to help facilitate that process. It's important to recognize that illness is only one state of health, and that a healing facilitator must learn to work with all states in order to create environment where health prevails. Okay? So this is basically saying your perception. Why? Look at the large picture. Stop getting hung up with the small picture. Okay, next one, 5th, is about truth, which is also a life lesson. We'll talk about that later. As a facilitator, it's always important to speak one's own truth. Yet in doing so, we must acknowledge that truth is always a work in progress. Thus, leave yourself room for growth in the words you speak, and speak your truth in a fashion that allows others to stand in their own truth without feeling threatened by yours. Honor all flavors of the truth, no matter how different they may seem from your own. Remember, competition is only an illusion of polarity on the game board. Absolutely true. So stand in your truth, but know that others are going to have different truth and make space for it. Here's the way I see it. Real simple. Now you're not saying, oh, you're wrong. You're just saying, here's another view. Here's how I was taught to do that. Okay? Different approach entirely, and huge difference. Huge difference. Okay, where are we? Number 6. 6th paradigm is about balancing the ego. A balanced ego is necessary in order to facilitate healing. Thus, as facilitators, it is necessary for us to check our own egos often and to examine truthfully our own motivations for our actions or words. If your ego grows too big, it will cut you off from your source. Yet, if it's not big enough, you'll never take your place as a facilitator. Interesting. It is a balance, isn't it? We've all seen the person who has the big ego. Life is only about me. We've even got leaders that way. We're seeing a lot of that. Okay, so basically, life's about me. How do you fit into my world type of thing? Or how can I know that I have to have a strong enough ego to have confidence to balance myself to stand up and take my place? That's the question. Most of the time, the people that we deal with in my classes need boost of ego, not lowering the ego. The majority of the time, most light workers, most people who work in metaphysics need a boost of ego, not a lessening of ego. It's a balance. Okay, number 7 is all about discernment. Learn to practice the art of discernment and making choices without judgment, to monitor carefully what enters your field, and to be discriminating about choosing only those things and ideas that complement your energy or our energy. Everything else can be released without judgment. We do not have to be a part of everything. Rather, if we choose only what feeds and nurtures us, we have more to give others. Perfect. Discernment was the first tool of the New Age that the group taught me. It was one of the first channels that they gave. And they said discernment simply means that you're going to make life choices, but you're not going to call one good or bad. Interestingly enough, in the study of quantum mechanics, which I do a lot of, well, because it relates to us. Quantum mechanics is us on a subatomic scale. And a lot of things that we discovered in the quantum field really work in this field as well. In the quantum field, there's no judgment. There's no judgment about anything. It's absolutely fascinating what takes place and how that works with that. There was a point I was going to make and I lost it. It'll come back later. Anyway, sorry about that. Discernment was the first tool that they told me about. They told me specifically that it was making life choices without the need for judgment. If we don't, what happens is when we call something bad, we label it, we put a marker on it, and we also put this string on it, which follows us around every place we go. And now that bad stuff is with us wherever we go because it's following us around. We've just labeled it. It's become part of us. So discernment is simply saying, oh, this is for me at this time. It doesn't mean that it's always right. It doesn't mean that it's going to be right for everybody else. But this is my truth. This is where I'm going. This is where I'm stepping. And this feels right to me. That is discernment. That is discernment. Okay? We'll talk more about that as we go through this. There's a lot more that we can work with in this one as well. But discernment is one of the first tools of living in the new energy. Number 8, creating safe space. The wisest words that a facilitator can use are, I don't know. Thus, even as we are teaching, we must make space for the empowerment of others. None of us have all the answers, but together, all of us have access to all of the answers. So creating a safe space, keep that in mind. Not so much that they all have to, where you're going to create them a space where they're going to think their successes and their failures. And they'll do well with it. Real simple. All right, number 9 paradigm is all about vulnerability. Our true strength as healers lies in being able to be vulnerable. It is our humanness that makes us special. We must learn to let this shine through in all that we do and to share mistakes openly with others. In this way, our perceived weaknesses will soon become our greatest strengths. That is number 9. Number 10, mastery of thought. Remember, we may not have control over the thoughts that enter our heads, but we do have complete control over what stays there. Thus, it is our responsibility to become masters of our own thoughts and share this process with those with whom we work. Okay, so what missed the table there. So what does that really look like? Well, they've given the illustration many times. We can call this the subconscious mind. You can call it the unconscious mind. Whatever it is. You can call it the global collective conscious mind. And what happens is every thought that you've ever had in your lifetime, I'm going to have it sometime. Because it goes up here in this flow and goes all over everywhere. Every person has access to that flow. So every thought original thought that you've ever had is available to everyone. You know who knows this is the patent offices. The patent offices know this globally, because what will happen is somebody will come up with a new invention. They'll work it out. They'll hire a lawyer. They'll draw the whole thing up. They will go to the patent office and they will register their patent in Zurich, Switzerland. And 2 days later, an almost identical one will show up in New York City. 6 weeks after that, you're going to have one that shows up in Germany somewhere. That's where you're trying to come up with. You're going to have one that shows up in Frankfurt. Okay, so basically they'll show up in different places. They all come. Why? Were they all copying each other? No. What happened was it was dropped in from above, and it was dropped into the collective consciousness of planet Earth. And these people were the first people to pull it down. And they're thinking, wow, I'm so smart. I had this idea. I got this all myself. I'm great. But other people are going to come up with something very similar because you're not alone. You're part of a collective consciousness. Mastery of thought is that. You start seeing things go up there. You go, oh, there's a negative thought. Oh, that's a nasty one. I'm going to make sure that one keeps on going. You can identify it. You can look at it. You can say, oh, that's a negative thought. Okay. And let it go. But the moment you say, oh, that's a negative thought, I have to solve this, and you bring it into your world, now you're not a master of your thoughts anymore. And that's what mastery of thought's about. It's not necessarily about only thinking good thoughts. Please understand that. There's times where you're going to have to pull one of these big problems into your world and solve it. So that's the case. But to get in the habit of choosing carefully which ones you choose as they go by, that is mastery of thought. That's what that is. That's a way to work with that. Number 10 is motivation. It's important to understand that everyone has the same base motivation. Fundamentally, we're all like little children, fumbling around in a darkened room, searching for the door back into the light. The easiest way to find the light while not hurting one another is to hold hands. That's simple. It sounds easy, doesn't it? Not, but it sounds easy. And finally, the last paradigm, which is the 12th paradigm, is about responsibility. It is not possible to heal another. It's only possible to create and offer them space in which to heal themselves if they so choose. Do not take responsibility for the healing of anyone other than yourself. If you should find yourself drained of energy by your clients, it's because you are taking responsibility for their healing. Remember that responsibility is the balance of power. Help those you facilitate to take responsibility for their own healing so that they may hold their own true power. Sounds simple, not easy. Simple, not easy. That's the 12 paradigms. It gave me a lot of information. It gave me some incredible information that I was very honored to have, and really helped me say, okay, I don't have to worry about this, or the group doesn't worry about this. This is not as important as I thought, and this is important. These are the things to really focus on. That really helped me focus a lot. So it's with great honor that I pass that on. And I pass that on to as many of you that can take this and use it different ways. That is the idea. Okay, we made it through the first day. It's good. We're going to do a channel from the group now, and they're going to talk about the last part today, which is the art of mastery. So we are going to be doing that. I'm going to drop into channel right now. Just let me take a quick drink, and I'll be right back with you. Oh, sure. I almost spilled it all over my shirt. That's great. Okay, here we go. Greetings, dear ones. I am Observer. I join you at such a beautiful time in your lives to watch the energy that's moving all around all of you. The magic is here in front of you, and now you can take it and use it yourselves. What we will give you during these times are simply tools. They're not magical in themselves. They're simple aspects of being able to work with people and to give you ideas of how to do that in very positive ways, to be able to work with people on a consistent basis. That is the ideas of what we'll be working with. Now, there's some interesting things about mastery, because that's what you're looking for when you look at spiritual psychology. The whole purpose of spiritual psychology is to move toward mastery. And that's what you do in all of your lifetimes anyway. As you plan your visitation to planet Earth around the large table, as you gather all your friends together to talk about what's going to take place, as all these things happen, you set up possibilities for you to master things. So what does it look like when you master something? Does it mean you walk on water? Does it mean you're so good at it, you're always going to do it? Does it mean that you're so good at XYZ of mastering whatever this is that you're going to start doing work in this area and that you're going to work in this area the rest of your life because you're so good at it? Well, it's a possibility. But it's not what we suggest. What we suggest is that you find things that you love to do and get good at them. But you're also going to find that you're naturally always evolving anyway. It's who you are. You're a spirit, and as a spirit, you're perfect. You don't have to worry about anything in the survival area, in the financial area, in the love area. All the difficult things that you deal with on earth are not dealt with on this side of the veil. We don't have egos that we have to wrestle with. We don't have to do those things, but you do. So as you reach certain levels of mastery, what happens? Well, there are two aspects that always happen when you reach mastery in any area. And the first one is that the teacher emerges. What does that mean? Well, most of the time it means you're going to start teaching. What are you going to start teaching? That's the big question. That's the question everyone has. And the interesting part is, from our perspective, that doesn't make any difference. From our perspective, it doesn't make any difference what your curriculum is. From our perspective, it's the fact that you're answering the call, that you're moving in that direction, that you're starting to bring that channel through, that you're starting to get excited about that and spontaneous about that. And the teacher emerges naturally. Now, many of you will not think you're teachers. So what happens when the teacher starts to emerge and you go, oh, no, don't ask me. I don't know those answers. Well, you're on the planet of free choice. You can play any role you wish to play. But it doesn't mean that the teacher won't emerge. It just means that you won't know it. But the students will still show up. And that's the difference. That's when you start to know that you're walking in mastery of something. Does the mastery mean that you want to go out and do whatever that is that you're a master at every single day? No, it's like anything else. You need diversity. You'll get bored doing the same thing over and over again. But what it means is that people are liable to walk right up to you and ask you very interesting questions sometimes. Sometimes you'll be one of those people that quietly exudes this beautiful energy. And here you are standing in line at the grocery store and somebody behind you is starting to tell you their entire life story. Interesting. That's because you exude this energy. They know it. You may not know it, but they know it. So as you start reaching higher levels of mastery in an area, the teacher in that area starts to emerge. We do apologize. The keeper had the hiccups. We had to deal with them. Anyway, that's the first thing that happens is the teacher naturally emerges. Whether you want to be a teacher or not, that part of you starts to shine very clearly. And the second part that happens is you change the role of your catalyst. Now, we haven't gotten into the part where we talk about the catalyst yet, but these are the catalysts for your life lessons. When you choose a life lesson, you are around the big table when M's there and you're making all these contracts for your visitation to planet Earth. You make all these wonderful contracts, you also ask somebody to be your catalyst. And most of the time, the catalyst is negative. Negative catalysts seem to work better than positive ones. It is your choice. It doesn't mean it needs to stay that way. But when you're around the big table at home, you're more interested in results than you are in positive and negative. You're more interested in those parts than anything else. So you do whatever you want. You can use positive catalyst all you want, but after using positive catalyst for 3 or 4 lifetimes and not mastering your life lesson, you're probably going to bring in a negative one. It's usually what happens. Is that wrong? It works. You know how to motivate yourself in your. But what happens when you reach levels of mastery, that role automatically changes. Okay, so let's say, for instance, we're talking about definitions, as definition seems to be a very common one amongst light workers, especially feminine light workers. What happens is you're very sensitive and you have a catalyst who's your first master manipulator. Let's just say that it's mom. And mom is your first master manipulator. You can't do anything right. Mom can always find something wrong with anything you're doing. And she does it out of love. She does it because she loves you. She's just trying to perfect you. She's just trying to make you a better person. And she truly believes that that's why she does it. And she's always looking for some way that she can improve you, and she's driving you crazy. Absolutely drives you up a wall. Because, hey, Mom, I'm okay. I don't need anything. Mom, I'm fine. Mom, stop. And many times, it comes to a point where you have to put a boundary down. Well, that's what definition is about, defining your boundaries. So when you put the boundary down, many times what happens is they change. And other times they don't change. Other times they'll still be there, but they won't bother you because your boundaries are down. Interesting. There's different ways of doing this, and we'll talk more about this, especially when we get to talking about the life lesson of definition in detail, because this is a very common one with light workers on planet Earth at this point. But this is one of the areas that works on a regular basis with this whole changing the role of the catalyst. Now, you've got Mom, who was your catalyst. So now you're doing all this work over here, and you're starting to really evolve yourself. You're reaching levels that you feel wonderful about. And maybe you've been away for a few months, so you come back over here and you got to deal with Mom again. You're not looking forward to this. You know that you're going there for Christmas. You're just really not looking forward to it. You want to get out of there as soon as you can, and yeah, you're just going to do the best you can. You go there, and she's changed. She's still Mom. She's still trying to perfect you in some way, but she does it with a different attitude. She does it with oh, honey, I know you don't think you need this, but you might want to try this. Instead of saying, honey, you really need to fix this. Now she's starting to see you in a slightly different way. You have changed her role in your life. It doesn't mean she's going to stop right away. We are creatures of habit. She's still going to try and perfect you, probably for many years, but she knows that there's a boundary there now. And she may say it differently, and she may say it less. And she may say, and you may actually have a different type of relationship going forward from that point forward with your mother. Unfortunately, it also works the other way, where you have to put a boundary down, and you have to put the boundary down hard. And she gets her feelings hurt, and you don't talk for 3 or 4 years. That happens regularly. It's unfortunate, but it's really more their choice than yours. So one of the things that happens as you walk into mastery is that you change the role of the catalyst. It automatically happens. It's nothing you really need to worry about, but it shows you that you're starting to work on a different level in that area. In other words, if the catalyst is catalytic for one thing, that's the area that you're going to master, and that will automatically change the role of the catalyst, and it'll also bring out the teacher. The teacher is here. So is everybody a teacher? Is that the idea? Is that what the group's trying to tell us? Yes, they are. Real simple. Know it or not, claim it or not, use it or not, doesn't make any difference. There's people watching you. When you start reaching levels of success, dear ones, you will have people start to notice, they will emulate you, and that is what you've come for in most of the time. You've come specifically for that energy. Dear ones, if we could tell you how magical it is that you're here on this planet at this moment. It took a lot of work, and yet you're here. You made it. You're at the right space at the right time. Yes, we know you still don't know exactly what to do or where the essence is for all of it, but you're getting closer. You can be on purpose as long as you're in love. And that's what we're here working with. So, dear ones, we will tell you there are certain people that were specifically placed on planet Earth in many different time frames. So not just right now. But sometimes there are places that need a grounding of energy, and a very specific person is placed on the planet in that location. And we're speaking to many of them right now. Some of you are here for a specific location. Some of you are being called into contract work that you don't even know where it's going right at this moment. It's coming. Some of you have already been into your work. Some of you have been doing it for years. Maybe partially successful, maybe hugely successful, maybe not successful. Maybe you just dip your toes in it every once in a while, come back and see if it's better. Whatever the case, now is the time. Your work is needed. Your teaching is needed. Your mastery is needed. You're closer than you think, dear ones. Welcome home. With that, we will take you on a journey for these 9 days. We'll take you through all the aspects of things that we can show you about how to see yourself from the perspective of spirit. There's much of this that you will use. Some of it you won't. Some of it won't fit. Take what fits. Take what you can use. Pull it out of the subconscious mind and claim it as your own. Know that you're all in this together. You're all connected. It's a beautiful time to be alive. And there are critical people in the perfect place to make this work. And with that, I leave you for the time being. Know that you are on purpose. There are healers awakening on this planet, and that is wonderful, because there's much healing to take place. And there's many people requesting it at this point. So with that, I ask you to treat each other with the greatest of respect. Nurture one another at every opportunity and play well together. I'm an observer, and I do like to watch. Aspavo, dear ones. I love you dearly. Aspavo. Okay, we're off to a good start. Like I said, schedule will change a little bit as we go through this, but I'm very excited about it. I will give you a specific email address to write your questions to tomorrow when we come together, okay? So you'll have those. You can get, we're not going to do them right away for the first 3 days anyway, so our schedule's already taken up, so we're already there. But if you have questions or comments or things that you'd like to add to, or questions that you'd like to talk about, go ahead and start writing them down and bringing them in. And we'll, when we collect enough of them, we'll do a question and answer day. If we need 2 days, we'll do 2 days, whatever it is. I'm very honored to be walking through this with you. I'm glad we were able to do this first day. We've made this one free so that you can kind of get a sample and an idea of what this is going to look like, and really what spiritual psychology really is and what it's all about. And I hope that this works for you. Come join us. Aspavo, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day.